Is that fire truck gonna move? Oh no, it's so loud. Anxiety, somebody's watching me. It's my anxiety. Anxiety. Yep, there it goes. Okay. Alright, so this is something new that I'm doing. I've never really made a video like this, and it's been a while since I even made videos. But I wanted to do something to capture my prowess, my design thinking. But before I do that, I wanted to take a couple steps back to explain why I'm making this video. And the reason simply lies in the fact that I was laid off last Monday from General Mills, or at least I was notified of it. My last official day is July 15th. However, during that time I'll be using most of my vacation that I've saved up, and along with 4th of July coming up, I won't be back in the office for another 2 weeks. So this gives me a lot of time to really think about what I want to do in this time off, and then I also have another 8 weeks of severance pay, which I'm very grateful for. And I won't be talking much about the layoffs or how I feel about them. I think it's pretty clear, but I do want to talk about how I work as a designer and what that means to me, and hopefully be able to show you, the audience, whoever you are, how I go about that. So potential recruiters, friends or family that want kind of a peek behind the curtain and what goes on inside my creative and chaotic mind, this is a first video of a couple in a series that will document how I like to work. So, combined with the 2 weeks that I have off, in addition to the 8 weeks of severance pay, I have a lot of time on my hands. And while I will be diligently updating my resume, and I'm currently doing so right now to send out many job applications, I also want to take some time back to myself to really return to and explore my creativity. And one of those kind of avenues for me is game design. And we're not really talking video game design or necessarily like board game or like tabletop game design, but think of party games but with an indoor feel to them. Because in my experience of wanting to play more games year round, because I live in Minnesota, I've discovered that a lot of games just don't really exist, both indoors and outdoors, unless they're like really messy. So playing beer pong, you knock over a cup and you get alcohol on the floor and it's really sticky, it's hard to clean up. So is there a way to create games that still have like a tactile, punchy feeling to them that gives you this kind of release of energy in a way that doesn't come with sacrificing damages or cleanup or time to really take all of that into consideration? And that's where I came up with Shufflepong. And if you're not familiar with that, I'll be diving a little bit deeper into it right after this. But next up, I want to try a different game. And this one I want to design with the intention to not make it a product necessarily. I'm simply designing a game to design a game. And I want to be able to show off how I go about that. So documenting my entire creative process, starting with, ideation and sketching, and jumping into iteration and prototyping, and how does that play into play testing and consumer feedback to finally build out what the branding or communication and stylistic choice of how I would, in theory, show this game off to someone. And I want to reiterate that it is not meant to be a saleable product. I'm not going to be necessarily going after price point or large-scale manufacturability. But if that were to become the case, we could talk about that later. But for now, I simply want to design a game because that is a passion of mine. So come with me on this journey and hopefully have some fun. So where did Shufflepong come from? And better yet, what is it? So Shufflepong, put simply, is a combination of tabletop shuffleboard that you might play at a bar with beer pong. And it takes the sliding discs or pucks from that game of shuffleboard and adds a cup on top of them where you throw ping pong balls into. If you're interested in learning more about how the rules work or gameplay, I do still have an old TikTok account and Instagram account dedicated to it. It has not been touched in a couple of years because of working a corporate job and wanting to live my life as a normal human being rather than entrepreneur. But if you're interested, go. I'll drop some links in the description below. Feel free to check it out there. But I want to talk more about how Shufflepong came to be, where it started, and why it ended, most importantly. And it originally came to me in 2020, in the spring of 2020, a wonderful time for all of us, I'm sure. I had just been accepted into grad school at the University of Minnesota while living in Milwaukee, and had not really felt like I was prepared for it. So during our elaborate indoor time, I decided to, do my own little ideation session. And I thought, let me try to come up with 10 great game ideas that I can pitch to my program coordinator to say, hey, look at me, I'm ready to be a product designer. And one of those games in my notebook that I still have and could go find was Shufflepong. And at the time, it was a very basic sketch, and it just simply involved sliding cups across the table and throwing balls into them, which is essentially the overall concept. And even despite a couple years of iteration, not much has changed from that original idea. But after that, I got accepted into the program. I went to the program. I realized that when you're in school, you don't necessarily have the same creative freedom of just a guy alone in his bedroom during a pandemic. There are certain classes you need to take and certain assignments that pair with those classes. So I wasn't able to actually utilize or take Shufflepong to the next level until the last semester of my grad program, which was the spring of 2022. And I decided to sign up for a course called Game Design, which to this day is my favorite course I've ever taken throughout both undergrad and graduate school. In it, we studied how both board games and video games work and what makes some succeed where others may fail. And during the second half of the semester... Oh, Lyndon, stop. And then in the second half of the spring semester, we were allowed to design our own game and bring it to life. And at first, I was maybe going to just conform to the rest of the class and design a board game or design a video game. But I decided to ask my professor at the time if it would be possible for me to design what I defined as a party game. And while beer pong is an essence and kind of a stylistic inspiration for what Shufflepong is, there was never any intention to have alcohol be involved in the game itself. And after I shared that with my professor, she was all for it. I really appreciate her support. I'll give her a shout out in the link below if she's still teaching. I should probably know her name if I'm doing all this. I'm going to pause and figure out what her name is. my brief search has yielded no results, but I will hopefully be able to add her name in during the post-processing of this video. But all in all, that's to say that Shufflepong would not have been possible without her support. And throughout this course, I went through multiple iterations, starting with simply target bowls and cups taped together with sand in balloons to weigh down the cups to make sure they didn't tip over while you were sliding them across the table. And we're talking the ugliest prototypes you can think of. And that is really important to me as a designer, is that the first iteration does not have to be the prettiest, and honestly should not be the prettiest, because when iterating and when prototyping, to spend all of your time, energy, and resources to make and craft the perfect thing on the first pass is simply a waste, because you'll not learn if you do not iterate. So that was my biggest takeaway from the beginning of that class. Welcome, Falafel. Would you like to sit down? Or just walk over here. You're really blocking my camera. Like, really blocking my camera. So moving forward beyond the first iteration, I wanted to experiment with how the pucks could interact with each other in unique ways, beyond just simply impact. Because I felt like there could be more strategy and depth involved when playing the shuffleboard portion. So by doing so, I tried out rubber bands, Velcro, and eventually even magnets on the outsides to see if that would reflect different polarities pushing off of each other, and learned through playtesting that while rubber bands are fun, they're also a little dangerous in case they snap, shoot off, fly away, whatever. And magnets, while effective in the brainstorming process, weren't actually that strong when dealing with the kinetic energy of being hit by something moving at such a high speed. However, I did learn that magnets could be applied elsewhere, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. The big winner here was Velcro. Having the two different elements of Velcro, both the soft and the sticky side, touch each other when sliding, created these really fun twist moves. I forget exactly what we used to call them. I think hook shots, but twisters I think might have been the literal name. And through that second round of playtesting, just that early on, I realized that Velcro was going to be a crucial part of just adding another element to the game. So I was able to take that through the second round of playtesting and continue on with it into the future. And from that second iteration, I finally moved on to kind of creating team colors of red and blue. So people kind of had more of an identity to, I'm playing for the red team, I'm playing for the blue team, which seems like a very small thing, but when you're able to define teams in a very easy way, it can really create team unity and even more competitiveness among the group. So from there, I was using duct tape, red duct tape and blue painter's tape to cover all of my pieces. I had not even gone into 3D printing anything besides trying to, and this is true, give a larger rim to the solo cups, because I realized that my classmates were not as good at beer pong as I were. And that's because I played a lot of ping pong trick shots growing up. Those are still on YouTube as well, if you know where to look for them. But that idea ended up falling through because a 3D printed rim was simply an even springing your backboard to send the ball further away from the cup rather than catch it and drop it further inside. So, you live and you learn. You iterate. That's kind of the whole point of what we're here to do. But all in all, you're going to fail sometimes, and that's okay. So during my third iteration, that is what I procured to turn into the class for my final assignment. And after submitting it and getting it back, I, of course, killed it. My professor loved me. But no, besides the point, I got the product back the night before going to a house party with some of my friends. And I decided to bring it with me because I thought that I had made a pretty fun game and wanted to show it off. So I brought it to a house party, set it up, and of course confused a lot of people for about 20 minutes. But by about an hour into the night, this really beautiful moment occurred where there were people coming up to the table and asking, what is this? What's going on? Like, this isn't beer pong. And I was able to witness people turn to them and say, this is Shufflepong. Here's how it works. And seeing your creation come to life and be able to stand on its own, just, it gives me goosebumps thinking back to that, in, not to be corny, but like it genuinely does. And that is when I realized I wanted to see what I could do with this. And in addition to seeing the fervor of it being picked up among the group, I had multiple people come up to me that night and say, are you selling this? Could I buy this? I would love to have it at one of my parties. And at the time I only had one copy, so I said, well, no, but I think I could, in theory. So I enlisted the help of my friend Sean, who I had met earlier that year in a different class, he's a mechanical engineer and very talented, 3D printer, 3D modeler, all of that stuff. And I said, Sean, would you be willing to help me try to bring this thing to life and really build it out? And he accepted, and I'm really grateful that he did, because without him, Shufflepong would not have become what it did during its time. And we went on to purchase 4 3D printers, start running them full time, and producing as many sets as we could at a time, which was not very fast, but it was more than just one set on its own. And from there we launched a website and sold, not a lot of products. I'm not going to say that we sold a lot, but we sold over 20 sets, and that was only over the course of about, I would say, 6 or 8 months of selling, and got all the way to the point of saying, what if this was larger than this? What if we scaled it up to be an injection mold and go to Kickstarter? And during that time, I thought a lot about what that next step would mean. Not only as how much support would I need to find, but what happens after that moment, that the campaign does get backed. We do reach our goal of $15,000 to make our first set of injection molds. What then? I'm now managing a company that hopefully will start paying Sean, because this man's just volunteering his time along with me to build all this out. And that idea of having to not only be the product designer, user researcher, market researcher, but also now CEO and CFO, it really intimidated. Sorry. I'm not getting emotional, I'm just really dry throat. It intimidated me. It became this overarching fear that I don't want to be the CEO of any company. I not the biggest fan of capitalism, if we're being honest, but I do really love game design, and so I really tried to build this product as far out as I could before it got to the point of the product has now overtaken me and my free time, and if I continue to let it do that, I'm not going to have as much fun as I'm having right now, just building a game and playing with my friends. So I decided to take a step back and find a real job that paid real money to pay real rent, and let it go by the wayside. But now, we've got the chance to do something new, something fun. So I'm hoping that I can take this new approach with everything I've learned from Shufflepong and make the experience even better for me with healthy boundaries. Loud truck, loud truck.